It was late Friday evening, and the world seemed to slow down outside of town. The gas station sat alone on the edge of the highway, far away from the bright lights and busy streets of the city center. It wasn't much to look at, just a small building with 2 rows of fuel pumps out front, a flickering neon sign above the door reading "Open," and a few scattered vending machines glowing faintly under the weak yellow light. Cars rarely stopped here unless they were desperate for fuel or snacks, making it a quiet place most nights. But tonight something unusual was about to happen. Maya Johnson pulled up to one of the pumps just after 9 o'clock. Her black sedan gleamed slightly despite the dirt from the road, and she stepped out with the confidence of someone who knew how to take care of herself. Maya was tall and athletic, with long braids tied neatly at the back of her head. She wore a simple tank top and sweatpants, clothes that showed off her toned muscles, a result of years spent training in mixed martial arts. Tonight, however, she wasn't thinking about fighting. She had finished teaching a class at the local gym earlier and was looking forward to heading home for some well-deserved rest. The air was cool, carrying the faint smell of gasoline and asphalt. Maya stretched her arms briefly before grabbing the nozzle from the pump and starting to fill her tank. She moved with ease, her movements smooth and deliberate. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Then, the silence was broken. A loud laugh echoed through the empty parking lot. Maya glanced over her shoulder to see a group of 5 men climbing out of a beat-up white van parked a few spaces away. They looked like trouble. Their clothes were mismatched and dirty, their faces unshaven, and their eyes glassy from too much drinking. One of them slammed the van door shut, causing a metallic clang that made Maya flinch slightly. She turned back to her car, hoping they would leave her alone, but they didn't. Instead, they started walking toward her, their boots scuffing against the cracked pavement. The leader of the group, a man with messy dark hair and a leather jacket, swaggered ahead of the others. His name was Jake, though Maya didn't know that yet. He carried himself like he owned the place, even though he clearly didn't belong there any more than she did. As he approached, his friends spread out behind him, forming a loose semicircle around Maya's car. "Hey, sweetheart," Jake called out, his voice slurred and dripping with arrogance. He leaned casually against the hood of Maya's car, invading her space without permission. "You lost? This ain't no neighborhood for someone like you." Maya ignored him, pretending to focus on the numbers ticking upward on the pump display. She didn't want to give these men the satisfaction of a reaction. Unfortunately, ignoring them only seemed to encourage them further. Another man, shorter and stockier than Jake, snickered loudly. "Yeah, maybe she needs directions," he said, his tone mocking. "Or maybe she just likes hanging out in creepy places." Maya clenched her jaw but kept her composure. She had dealt with jerks like this before, men who thought they could intimidate women because they outnumbered them, or because they believed themselves superior. She wasn't going to let them ruin her night. Still, she couldn't shake them, feeling that things were about to get worse. And then, one of them crossed a line. The shortest man in the group, a wiry guy with greasy hair, reached out and deliberately knocked Maya's purse off the hood of her car. Its contents spilled across the ground, her wallet, keys, phone, and a few other personal items scattered everywhere. It was a petty act, meant to provoke her, and it worked. For a second, Maya felt a surge of anger bubbling inside her chest. For a moment, she considered saying something sharp, putting them in their place with words instead of actions. But she knew better. These weren't the kind of people who responded to logic or reason, so instead, she bent down calmly to pick up her things, careful not to show any sign of fear or frustration. Her hands moved quickly, gathering her belongings and stuffing them back into her purse. Jake watched her closely, smirking, as if he expected her to beg for mercy or burst into tears. When she straightened up again, he grabbed her arm roughly, pulling her closer. "Where do you think you're going?" he sneered, his breath reeking of alcohol. "We're not done talking yet." That was when Maya finally looked at him directly. Her expression remained calm, almost eerily so, but there was steel in her gaze. "Let go of me," she said, her voice low and steady. There was no trace of fear in her tone, only a quiet warning. When Jake didn't release her, Maya acted. With practiced precision, she twisted his wrist until he yelped in pain and stumbled backward. His friends froze, shocked by the sudden turn of events. No one expected this woman to fight back. Not like that. For a moment, there was complete silence, broken only by the sound of the gas pump clicking off as Maya's tank filled completely. Jake rubbed his sore wrist, glaring at her now. "You've got guts, lady," he growled. "But you picked the wrong crowd to mess with tonight." Maya didn't respond. She simply stood there, her body tense but relaxed, ready for whatever came next. She had been in situations like this before, both in real life and during training sessions at the gym. She knew how to read people's movements, how to anticipate their next move, and she knew that sometimes the best defense was a good offense. The other men began closing in around her, their earlier cockiness replaced by something darker. They weren't used to being challenged, especially not by someone outnumbered. Maya could see the uncertainty in their eyes, but she also saw the anger simmering beneath the surface. They weren't going to back down easily. As they formed a tighter circle around her, Maya took a deep breath. She had hoped to avoid conflict, but now it seemed inevitable. If they wanted a fight, she was ready to give them one. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Maya stood motionless, her eyes scanning the faces of the men surrounding her. They were loud and obnoxious, but she could see uncertainty creeping into their expressions. None of them had expected her to fight back, not like that. She knew this moment was critical. Showing fear would only embolden them further. Instead, she remained calm, her posture relaxed yet alert, ready to move at a moment's notice. Jake, the leader of the group, was the first to recover from the shock of having his wrist twisted. He flexed his hand a few times, wincing as he tested it out. His lips curled into a sneer, and his voice came out low and dangerous. "You think you're tough, huh?" he spat. "Nobody makes me look weak." Maya didn't respond. She kept her gaze steady, watching him closely. She could tell he was angry now, angry enough to lash out without thinking. That was good. Angry people made mistakes, and if there was one thing Maya had learned over years of training, it was how to exploit those mistakes. One of the other men, shorter and stockier than Jake, stepped forward. His name was Kyle, though Maya didn't know that. He pointed a finger at her, his tone mocking. "Listen, lady," he said, trying to sound confident despite the flicker of doubt in his eyes. "We're just messing around. No need to get all worked up." Maya tilted her head slightly, her expression unchanging. "Messing around?" she repeated, her voice calm but sharp. "Is that what you call grabbing someone against their will? Or knocking their stuff onto the ground?" Kyle hesitated, glancing at Jake for guidance. Jake nodded almost imperceptibly, signaling him to keep going. Emboldened, Kyle took another step closer. "Yeah, well, maybe you shouldn't be so uptight," he shot back. "Relax a little, have some fun." Fun? The word hung in the air between them, dripping with sarcasm. Maya let out a slow breath, shaking her head slightly. These men clearly didn't understand the situation they were in. To them, she was just another person to bully, someone weaker who wouldn't or couldn't fight back. But Maya was anything but weak. And now they were about to find that out the hard way. Before anyone could say another word, Jake lunged at her. His movements were clumsy, fueled by rage rather than skill. He swung wildly, aiming for her face with a closed fist. It was exactly the kind of reckless attack Maya had been waiting for. Without hesitation, she sidestepped, dodging his punch effortlessly. As his momentum carried him past her, she grabbed his arm mid-swing, twisting it behind his back and using his own weight to throw him off balance. With a grunt, Jake landed hard on the pavement, sprawled out awkwardly. For a split second, everyone froze, including Maya. The sudden shift in power dynamics shocked the men. They weren't used to being challenged, especially not by someone outnumbered. But Maya didn't waste time dwelling on their surprise. She quickly scanned the others, assessing their positions and preparing for whatever came next. Kyle reacted first, charging toward her with a shout. He wasn't as reckless as Jake, but he still underestimated her abilities. Maya waited until he was close enough, then pivoted sharply, delivering a swift kick to his stomach. The force of the blow sent him stumbling backward, gasping for air. He crashed into one of the gas pumps, clutching his midsection as he tried to catch his breath. The remaining 3 men exchanged uneasy glances. They hadn't expected things to escalate this quickly, or for Maya to handle herself so effectively. One of them, Ryan, decided to try a different approach. Instead of rushing her directly, he circled around to her left, attempting to catch her off guard. But Maya was too experienced to fall for such a simple trick. As soon as he moved, she spun around, grabbing his arm before he could make contact. With a quick twist, she flipped him over her shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground beside Jake. By now, the other 2 men, Chris and another guy whose name Maya didn't catch, were visibly shaken. Chris clenched his fists, trying to muster the courage to step forward. He threw a punch, aiming for her jaw, but his technique was sloppy. Maya ducked under his swing, coming up inside his guard. Before he could react, she delivered a sharp jab to his jaw, snapping his head back. The impact sent him stumbling backward, dazed and disoriented. The last man standing hesitated, glancing nervously at his fallen friends. He looked torn between joining the fight and running away. Maya locked eyes with him, daring him to make a move. For a moment it seemed like he might actually charge at her. But then, something in her gaze must have convinced him otherwise. Slowly, he backed away, raising his hands in surrender. Jake, meanwhile, had managed to scramble to his feet. His face was red with anger and embarrassment, his pride wounded as much as his body. "You're gonna regret this," he growled, pointing a finger at her. "You hear me? You don't mess with us." Maya crossed her arms, meeting his glare with unwavering calm. "I already did," she replied evenly. "And I'm still standing. What does that tell you?" Her words hit their mark. Jake opened his mouth to retort, but nothing came out. Instead, he turned to his friends, barking orders for them to get up and follow him. One by one, the men staggered to their feet, groaning and muttering curses under their breath. They limped back toward their van, dragging their bruised egos along with them. As the engine roared to life and the van sped away, kicking up gravel in its wake, Maya finally allowed herself to relax. She took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline coursing through her veins begin to subside. Then she bent down to pick up her purse, which had been knocked over during the scuffle. Everything inside seemed intact, though she made a mental note to check later once she got home. The parking lot was eerily quiet now, the only sound the faint hum of the gas station's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Maya glanced around, half expecting someone else to come out and witness what had just happened. Sure enough, a few curious faces appeared in the distance. A truck driver leaning out of his window, an older man stepping cautiously out of the convenience store. They stared at her with a mix of awe and disbelief, clearly unsure what to make of the scene unfolding before them. One of the bystanders, an older gentleman named Frank, approached her slowly. In his hand, he held a cell phone, its screen glowing softly in the darkness. "Ma'am," he said, his voice hesitant but respectful. "I recorded everything, just in case you need evidence for the police." Maya nodded, appreciating the gesture. "Thank you," she said simply, "but I don't think I'll need it. Let them go while they still can." Frank chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "That was incredible," he admitted. "Where'd you learn to fight like that?" "I teach self-defense classes," Maya explained, shrugging modestly. "Though tonight I guess I gave them a free lesson." Frank shook his head in amazement. "Well, I hope they learned something, because if they come back here, looking for trouble again, they're gonna regret it." Maya smiled faintly, though her mind was already moving on to other thoughts. She finished gathering her belongings, slid behind the wheel of her car, and drove off into the night. As she merged onto the highway, she couldn't help but reflect on what had just happened. It wasn't the first time she'd defended herself against harassment, and unfortunately, it probably wouldn't be the last. But each encounter reinforced her belief in the importance of standing up for oneself and helping others do the same. By the time she reached her apartment, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't single-handedly change the world overnight. But maybe, just maybe, she could inspire others to take control of their own lives, to refuse to be victims and to stand tall in the face of adversity. And that thought gave her hope. Maya stood still for a moment, taking in the scene around her. The parking lot was littered with groaning men, each nursing their injuries as they struggled to get back on their feet. Some tried to crawl away, while others leaned against the gas pumps for support. Jake, the leader of the group, was the first to recover slightly. He pushed himself up from the ground, wincing as he rubbed his sore shoulder. His face was red, not just from anger but also from humiliation. "You think you're tough?" Jake growled, pointing a shaky finger at Maya. "You don't know who you're messing with." Maya crossed her arms over her chest, her stance relaxed but firm. She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she let her silence speak for itself. Her calm demeanor only seemed to infuriate Jake further. He took a step forward, his fists clenched tightly, but stopped when Maya shifted into a defensive position. She raised her hand slightly, palms open, ready to defend herself if necessary. "Don't," she warned, her voice low and steady. "You've already lost this fight. Walk away before it gets worse." Jake hesitated, glancing at his friends. They were all injured, some more than others, but none of them looked eager to continue the confrontation. Kyle was still leaning against the gas pump, breathing heavily and clutching his stomach where Maya had kicked him. Ryan sat awkwardly on the ground, rubbing his arm where she'd flipped him over her shoulder. Chris stumbled backward, his jaw swollen and bruised from her jab. Even the last man, who hadn't dared to attack her directly, looked shaken as he helped one of his buddies stand. For a brief moment, Jake considered charging at her again, but something in Maya's gaze stopped him. There was no fear in her eyes, no sign of hesitation. She wasn't bluffing when she said she could make things worse, and deep down Jake knew it too. With a frustrated growl, he turned to his friends instead. "Come on," he barked. "Let's go." The men didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled toward their van, limping and stumbling as they went. Jake climbed into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut behind him. The engine roared to life, and the van sped off, leaving behind a cloud of dust and the faint smell of burning rubber. Maya watched them disappear down the road, her body finally relaxing as the tension drained away. The parking lot fell silent once again, save for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above. Maya bent down to pick up her purse, which had fallen during the scuffle. Everything inside seemed intact: her wallet, keys, phone, and a few other personal items. She zipped it closed and slung it over her shoulder, then leaned against her car for a moment, letting herself process what had just happened. She wasn't proud of resorting to violence. In fact, she preferred to avoid physical confrontations whenever possible. But sometimes there was no other choice. These men had crossed a line. They had harassed her, invaded her space, and shown no respect for her boundaries. Maya had given them every opportunity to back off, but they refused to listen. When push came to shove, she had no regrets about defending herself. As she stood there, an older man approached cautiously. His name was Frank, and he had been watching the entire incident unfold from a safe distance. He held out his cell phone, its screen glowing softly in the dim light. "Ma'am," he said, his voice hesitant but respectful, "I recorded everything, just in case you need evidence for the police." Maya nodded, appreciating the gesture. "Thank you," she replied, "but I don't think I'll need it. Let them leave while they still can." Frank chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "That was incredible," he admitted. "Where'd you learn to fight like that?" "I teach self-defense classes," Maya explained simply, "though tonight I guess I gave them a free lesson." Frank shook his head in amazement. "Well, I hope they learned something, because if they come back here looking for trouble again, they're gonna regret it." Maya smiled faintly, though her mind was already moving on to other thoughts. She finished gathering her belongings, slid behind the wheel of her car, and drove off into the night. As she merged onto the highway, she couldn't help but reflect on what had just happened. It wasn't the first time she'd defended herself against harassment, and unfortunately, it probably wouldn't be the last. but each encounter reinforced her belief in the importance of standing up for oneself and helping others do the same. By the time she reached her apartment, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't single-handedly change the world overnight, but maybe, just maybe, she could inspire others to take control of their own lives, to refuse to be victims, and to stand tall in the face of adversity. And that thought gave her hope. The next morning, Maya woke up early, her mind buzzing with ideas. She decided to take action. Over the years, she had taught countless self-defense classes at the local gym, but those sessions were often attended by people who already felt empowered. What about the ones who needed it most? The women and minorities who faced discrimination and harassment daily. She realized there was a gap that needed filling. Maya reached out to community centers and neighborhood organizations, offering to host free self-defense workshops specifically for women and minorities. Her goal wasn't to teach aggression, but empowerment, to show others that they didn't have to be victims. Word spread quickly about the woman who had taken down a gang single-handedly at the gas station. Attendance at her workshops skyrocketed, and soon, Maya found herself surrounded by a growing network of supporters eager to stand up against injustice. Every weekend, Maya spent hours teaching techniques she had honed over years of training. She emphasized not just physical skills but also mental resilience. "It's not about fighting," she would tell her students. "It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone take that away from you." Her workshops became a safe space for people to share their experiences and learn how to protect themselves. Many of her students left feeling stronger, not just physically but emotionally. For some, it was the first time they had ever felt truly empowered. Maya saw the impact she was making, and it fueled her passion even more. One evening, after wrapping up a particularly successful workshop, Maya received a message on social media. It was from a young woman named Lisa, who had attended one of her classes. "Thank you," the message read. "I never thought I could stand up for myself until I met you. Last week someone tried to grab my bag on the bus and I used what you taught me. I got it back without getting hurt. Thank you for showing me that I'm stronger than I thought." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as she read the message. This was why she did what she did. Not for recognition or fame, but to help others realize their own strength. She replied to Lisa, encouraging her to keep practicing and reminding her that she was capable of handling whatever challenges came her way. As weeks turned into months, Maya continued to expand her reach. She partnered with local schools, churches, and advocacy groups to bring her workshops to even more communities. People began referring to her as Coach Maya, a title she wore proudly. Though she never sought attention, she embraced her role as a symbol of resilience and courage. And every time she passed that gas station on her way home, she smiled, knowing she had turned a dark moment into something meaningful. The weeks following that night at the gas station passed quickly for Maya. What started as a single act of self-defense had turned into something much bigger, a mission to empower others. Word about her free self-defense workshops spread like wildfire through the community. People were inspired by her story and many wanted to learn from her directly. Soon Maya found herself busier than ever, juggling her regular teaching job at the gym with organizing and leading these new classes. Her first workshop took place in a small community center on the edge of town. It was nothing fancy, just a plain room with worn-out mats on the floor and a few folding chairs pushed against the walls, but it didn't matter. The people who showed up made the space feel alive. There were women of all ages, some bringing their teenage daughters along. A few men also attended, eager to support their families or learn how to protect themselves. Everyone shared one thing in common: they wanted to feel safer and more confident in their daily lives. Maya began each session the same way. She introduced herself briefly, explaining her background in mixed martial arts and why she felt compelled to teach these skills. "I'm not here to make you fighters," she would say, pacing slowly in front of the group. "I'm here to help you find your strength. Sometimes all it takes is knowing you can defend yourself to change the way you carry yourself, and that alone can keep trouble away." The participants listened intently, nodding along as she spoke. Some looked nervous, glancing around the room as if unsure whether they belonged there. Others seemed determined, their eyes locked on Maya as if soaking up every word. She reassured them all, reminding them that no question was too silly and no movement too small to practice. "We're here to learn together," she said with a warm smile. "Nobody gets left behind." Once introductions were over, Maya moved on to the practical part of the class. She started with basic techniques: how to create distance between yourself and an attacker, how to use your voice to command attention, and how to recognize potential threats before they escalated. "Your body language matters," she explained, demonstrating how standing tall and making eye contact could send a clear message. "Don't mess with me." The participants paired up to practice. At first, some hesitated, unsure of their movements, but Maya walked around the room offering guidance and encouragement. "That's it," she told a young mother who struggled to raise her fists. "You've got this. Imagine someone trying to hurt you or worse, your child. Protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary." As the sessions progressed, Maya introduced more advanced moves, such as how to break free from grabs, deliver effective strikes to vulnerable areas, and escape dangerous situations. She emphasized the importance of awareness and quick thinking. "Fight smart, not hard," she reminded them. "You don't need brute strength to win a fight. You just need to know where to hit and when to run." One of the most popular exercises involved practicing scenarios. Maya would play the role of an aggressor, approaching volunteers in different ways, grabbing their wrist, pushing them lightly, or shouting insults. The goal was to teach the participants how to react instinctively without freezing up. "Most fights are won or lost in the first few seconds," she explained. "If you hesitate, you give the other person control. But if you act decisively, you can turn the tables." At the end of each workshop, Maya gathered everyone in a circle for a final discussion. She asked the participants to share what they had learned, not just the physical techniques, but also how they felt afterward. Many admitted they had been scared at first, worried they wouldn't be able to handle the exercises, but by the end of the session, they felt stronger, both physically and mentally. "I didn't think I could do any of this," said a middle-aged woman named Teresa during one of the closing circles. "But now I feel like I have tools I can actually use." "Thank you, Maya." Maya smiled warmly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You already had the strength inside you," she replied. "I just helped you bring it out." Outside of the workshops, Maya continued to receive messages from people who had attended her classes. Some thanked her for giving them the confidence to stand up to bullies or harassers. Others shared stories about how they had used her techniques in real-life situations. One message stood out in particular. It came from a college student named Maria, who wrote, "Hi, Coach Maya. I wanted to let you know that your class really helped me last week. I was walking home from campus late at night when a guy followed me. He tried to grab my arm, but I remembered what you taught us. I twisted out of his grip and yelled loudly. He ran away, and I got home safely. I don't know what I would have done without your lessons. Thank you so much." Reading those words filled Maya with pride and gratitude. She knew she couldn't prevent every bad thing from happening, but if her workshops could help even one person stay safe, it was worth it. Despite her growing popularity, Maya remained humble. She never sought recognition or fame. Her only goal was to make a difference. Still, the community began to take notice. Local newspapers wrote articles about her, calling her a hero and a role model. Friends and acquaintances congratulated her whenever they saw her, telling her how inspiring she was. While Maya appreciated the kind words, she always redirected the focus back to her students. "It's not about me," she would say. "It's about the people who are learning to protect themselves. They're the real heroes." As time went on, Maya expanded her efforts beyond self-defense workshops. She partnered with local organizations to host seminars on personal safety, mental resilience, and conflict resolution. She also worked with schools to develop programs aimed at teaching children and teenagers how to handle bullying and peer pressure. Her message was always the same: know your worth, trust your instincts, and never let anyone take that away from you. Through it all, Maya stayed grounded. She knew that true change took time and effort, and she was committed to seeing it through. Every morning she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And every evening as she drove past that gas station on her way home, she smiled, knowing she had turned a moment of fear into an opportunity to inspire others. Maya's journey was far from over, but she was exactly where she was meant to be. Months had passed since Maya first started her self-defense workshops, and they had grown far beyond what she ever imagined. What began as a small effort to help a few people in her neighborhood had blossomed into something much bigger, a movement that was spreading across the entire town. Word-of-mouth social media posts and local news coverage brought more and more people to her classes. Soon, Maya realized she needed a larger space to accommodate the growing number of participants. One sunny Saturday morning, Maya held her biggest event yet, a free outdoor seminar in the heart of the community park. Hundreds of people showed up, eager to hear her speak and learn from her experiences. Families spread out picnic blankets under the shade of tall oak trees, while others sat on folding chairs or stood at the edges of the gathering. A long table at the front displayed flyers about upcoming workshops, along with resources for personal safety and mental health support. Behind Maya, a colorful banner read, "Empowerment through Strength," capturing the essence of her mission perfectly. Maya stepped onto a modest wooden stage set up near the center of the park. She adjusted the microphone, took a deep breath, and looked out at the sea of faces before her. There were young girls clutching notebooks, older women nodding encouragingly, teenagers whispering excitedly to each other, and even a few fathers holding their daughters' hands. The sight filled her with gratitude and resolve. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady but warm. "I never expected this journey to grow so much, but seeing all of you reminds me why I started, to help people realize they are stronger than they think." She paused, letting her words sink in. Then she continued, sharing her own story, the struggles she faced growing up, the moments when she felt powerless, and how learning self-defense changed her life. "For years I thought strength was just physical," she explained, "but it's so much more than that. It's about believing in yourself, trusting your instincts, and refusing to let anyone take away your dignity." The crowd listened intently, hanging on every word. Some nodded in agreement while others wiped tears from their eyes. Maya knew she wasn't just speaking to individuals. She was addressing shared fears, frustrations, and hopes. She wanted everyone there to leave feeling empowered, not just to defend themselves physically, but to stand tall in every aspect of their lives. After her speech, Maya invited volunteers to join her on stage for a live demonstration of basics self-defense techniques. She chose a mix of participants, young and old, male and female, to show that anyone could learn these skills. With patience and encouragement, she guided them through simple moves: how to break free from a wrist grab, how to deliver a quick strike to an attacker's vulnerable areas, and how to create distance to escape danger. "This isn't about fighting dirty," she emphasized as she demonstrated a knee strike to the groin. "It's about survival. If someone tries to harm you, you have the right to protect yourself no matter what." The audience erupted into applause after each demonstration, cheering not only for Maya, but also for the brave volunteers who stepped forward. By the end of the session, dozens of people lined up to ask questions or thank her personally. One elderly woman approached Maya with tears in her eyes. "I've been afraid my whole life," she said softly. "But watching you today made me believe I can change that. Thank you for giving me hope." Maya hugged her gently, feeling a lump rise in her throat. These moments reminded her why she kept going despite the challenges. Every person she touched inspired her to keep pushing forward. As the day drew to a close, Maya reflected on how far she'd come. That night at the gas station had been frightening, yes, but it had also been a turning point. It forced her to confront not only the reality of harassment and discrimination, but also her ability to fight back, both literally and figuratively. Now she saw the ripple effects of her actions everywhere she went. Women walked taller, Children learned to use their voices, and communities came together to support one another. Maya didn't stop there. Over the following months, she expanded her efforts even further. She partnered with schools to implement anti-bullying programs, worked with local shelters to provide self-defense training for survivors of domestic violence, and collaborated with advocacy groups to raise awareness about racial and gender inequality. Her message remained consistent. Empowerment starts within, and no one should have to face fear alone. Her impact reached beyond her hometown. Videos of her workshops went viral online, inspiring people across the country, and even internationally, to start similar initiatives in their own communities. Strangers sent her messages thanking her for her courage and leadership. Some even traveled great distances to attend her events, hoping to meet the woman who had sparked so much change. Despite her growing fame, Maya stayed true to herself. She refused sponsorships or endorsements, choosing instead to focus on her mission without distractions. "This isn't about money or recognition," she told reporters during rare interviews. "It's about helping people find their power. That's all that matters to me." One evening, as Maya drove home from another successful workshop, she pulled over at the same gas station where everything had begun. The place looked exactly the same. The flickering neon sign, the cracked pavement, the quiet emptiness. But it felt different now. To Maya, it was no longer a symbol of fear or conflict. It was a reminder of resilience, growth, and the incredible things that could happen when someone decided to stand up for themselves. She stepped out of her car briefly, gazing at the spot where she had faced down those 5 men. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel proud, not just of that night, but of everything that had followed. Then, with a smile, she climbed back into her car and drove off into the night. Maya's journey was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning. She knew there would always be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome and battles to fight. But she also knew she wasn't alone. Thousands of people stood beside her now, united by a shared belief in strength, courage, and empowerment. Together, they were proving that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through, and that sometimes, all it took was one person to spark a revolution.